Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC recap of the LEC Playoffs Week 1. As I said, it was going to be out on Tuesday because I really needed last Monday or yesterday, if you watch this video on the day it's released, to rest. The weekend is long and the games are long and I have to stay focused at all times, obviously, and then also still do work afterwards. So hope you're okay with this. If not, well, you don't really have a choice. So I'm going to do the recaps of each best of 5 that was played. Gonna try to keep the individual game summaries a bit shorter because obviously they are best of 5, so they have a long narrative within them, and share some clips usual, and I'll share some thoughts on the teams at the end. We kicked off the weekend with Fnatic versus SK Gaming, and Fnatic were quite heavily the favorites heading into this, even though the regular split had been a bit difficult. I think that me included were like, okay, well, best of 5, these players are experienced. SK Gaming is probably going to have a difficult time keeping up. Now, in game 1, it was slow, and you'll see this trend throughout the entire weekend. Actually, the first game was a bit more hesitant, and after that, things exploded. But in game 1, we saw both teams feeling out a bit, trying to get that first engage, but it was Fnatic who got that first win. In the kill, as I mean, what I mean, and from there on the game kept going a bit more. Fnatic did get a bit scrappy in this first game, and SK Gaming did bounce back with a good fight in the bot lane. However, Fnatic was just better at team fighting overall, and this was a standout performance from Niski, especially on the Orianna, and I'll share a little clip here of what he was able to do.
It's getting lower. Where's the miracle steal out? The Hex Flash over the wall. Gen-X for it. They're going in. They're dunking down. Can they finish the Baron? They get it just barely, but now SK wants to take the fight. It's Blue off to the side. Keep your eyes on that charm. Gen-X doing good damage, but the follow-up's not quite. Oh, Niski! That's a hero play! Blue now moving forward. Blue getting taken down. It's the double kill for Bwipo. Fnatic have taken the Baron. They've taken the fight. They've turned the game back.
So Fnatic their first win, and the second game as well, it seemed like Fnatic would be winning. They had SK Gaming had a composition that needed to get ahead early on, but Fnatic was actually the one who was getting the early lead. So that was a bit surprising, and actually SK Gaming had a huge uphill battle to fight here. Fnatic again, however, started fumbling much like they had in game 1, and SK Gaming kept their heads really cool. They kept their heads cool really well, I should say. And from here on, you could just see SK Gaming's confidence growing back, and Jesu and Gen-X especially were performing very well, and SK Gaming was back in the driver's seat. Now, Fnatic did try to make these plays to try to get that lead back, because as I said, they had this scaling comp, so they were trying to find these engage where they had an advantage, but SK Gaming was just a better team in the second game, and they actually tied the series. Now, this proved a lot on both teams' side. It proved that Fnatic was still not as clean as many would have hoped they would be for the playoffs, but it also proved that SK's gaming mentality was actually super strong. Game 3 also went Fnatic's way. I think that game is another one where kind of the formula was repeated, where you could see that Fnatic overall in the early game was just very clean. Their bot lane is super strong, obviously, and the top side of the map overall is a bit more shaky, but you could see that there they were good, and then when the mid game arrives, they started to fall apart a bit more, where SK Gaming thrived in that mid game. So then we went to the game 4, and I think that this is maybe one of the most exciting games, individual games, we will see in this entire playoff series. There's another one coming up right in a bit, but we saw that SK Gaming fought with every cell in their body was trying to get this victory, and I think that there's big props to them, because I think that this is not something that many people expected them to do. But in that fourth game, Fnatic once again took a lead, then SK Gaming swung it back, and it was incredibly close. In the end, however, it was Fnatic who closed out the series 3-1, and even though that SK Gaming lost, I do want to share one incredible play from the man in the top lane, Gen-X, who played so phenomenally well. He deserves the highlight.
It becomes a little bit more difficult to lock down an upset or a Niski.
Blue has TP soon.
Gen-X, what can he get done? He moves forward. Gen-X, it's a clean play. They cannot body block the shotguns. Gen-X! It's disgusting! That's a shutdown! Southmate has to run for the hills. The ult to take him out to safety.
On Saturday, G2 met Schalke 04, and I think many people predicted this to be a 3-0, because G2 still #1 team in the league, very flexible in what they do. Schalke 04 barely made it to the playoffs, even though they finished 4th. It all came down to the very last moment. And as I said, the game number 1 was boring, as we saw with Fnatic versus SK, and we also see a bit more with Rogue versus Mad Lions. It started well for Schalke 04, punching G2 a few times in the bot lane, but G2 recovered pretty well. And from here on, the game slowly just went into G2's way. They were given small spaces, but really escalated that. They had easy drakes, easy map play. There wasn't really much Schalke 04 could have done in this game, aside from, just like be better individually, which is just difficult. That's not really a criterion, I think. Just be better. You could just see that G2 was very comfortable and very in the zone at kicking Schalke 04 out of this game. And in the second game, Schalke 04 started up spicing their things a bit more. They locked in a Darius in the top lane for Broken Blade, and they had a Zoe in the bot lane. Now, G2 responded to this with an Ashe and Braum, and this was after, I think, 4 bans that were dedicated from Schalke 04 were directed at Reckless's champion pool. Reckless said, oh, sure, I'll just play the Ashe. And he actually performed insanely well on this. You could see that G2 was very comfortable with playing around their bot laner so much as they had in previous patches they have played on in this split. And it wasn't very difficult for them as well. They got a very early first blood, and the game just seemed over from the start. Even though in the second game already you could see Schalke fighting back pretty well, but G2 just had too much power. Reckless, as I said, had an insane game, and it was definitely a more entertaining game, but G2 was just too strong. So then it seemed like we were heading to the 3-0 people were predicting to happen, but Schalke 04 spiced things up a bit more, and we saw them picking the blue side, and they instead of the red side that they had played on in the first 2 games, and they had a very strong draft. They had Broken Blade again on the Darius, which had looked very good in game number 2, and they had Neon on the Jinx. It was a much better game from Schalke overall, who got ahead very, very early on and just kept being in control the entire game. And G2 was trying to find a way back into that game, but the advantage was just too big. I think this is where you really saw that Jinx carry potential, but most importantly, we saw Broken Blade really popping off on the Darius. It was incredible performance from him, and Schalke 04 as a whole, as a team, as I said with SK Gaming, for them to be a rookie squad and to be mentally resilient is very impressive, but it's equally as impressive to be 0-2 down against the best team widely considered in the LEC and still keep your head cool and be able to manage out to be able to close out the a game when you're 0-2 down. And the highlight of this game, you've seen it probably pop around everywhere on Twitter, but it's still deserving of a highlight here in this video, is when Broken Blade showed why he was playing Darius.
Takes 2, Caps gets to the backline as Neon is forced away. Limit trying to get away as well, but Reckless is on the hunt and on the chase, and the shutdown comes out. Neon down, Jinx down, but here comes the Noxian Guillotine! Broken Blade cutting through G2 as quickly as he can as Caps. Now it's all on him to do it again. Broken Blade! Broken with the Decimate, heals himself back up. Caps with the shot, it's a pentakill! It's a Quadra! And Broken Blade bring down the axe! Looking for the pentakill, can't quite get it now. Wonder trying to get over the wall. Broken Blade pulls him right back in. A pentakill for Broken Blade.
So then we went to game 4 and G2 went back to the blue side. Interestingly enough, in the draft, while Schalke 04 had already picked a Vayne for the bot lane, G2 still decided to block in a Sion at top lane, which maybe alone wouldn't be that big of a problem, but Broken Blade still could lock in the Darius, and we'd already seen that his performance on it was really good, which Schalke 04 did, so that was very questionable decision-making from G2 in the draft phase there. Now, it did cost them dearly, actually. Schalke 04 looked much stronger than they had in game 3, actually. I think that in this game especially, they proved more overall consistency, and you could actually see that G2 had no real idea how to deal with Schalke 04. Schalke 04 was very much feeling their composition, had very much practiced their lineup very well, and throughout this entire game I got the feeling that they got that momentum. They really were able to reset their minds before their third game and just were playing like they were 1-0 up and were trying to dominantly win the second game. I have to say that I kind of gave props to Broken Blade and Neon for that third game. But man, throughout the entire series, it was definitely Limit on Schalke 04 who was the standout player. Even in the losses against G2, this guy was popping off on the Alistar especially, finding great engages and helping his team set up for great team fights, pulling them back in. So I will, for Game 4, also give the highlight to him with yet another one of those insane engages.
In about 5 to 10 seconds, either of these teams can one-shot a Baron, and even if you TP in, you're probably going to be too late, so you're losing a Baron no matter what. So that's why these teams are contesting midwave so much.
The thing is, Schalke have about 40 seconds before they need to pick something. They have to
Oh,
go in.
engage!
The combo pop
Both carries!
flashes away, puts up the divide and manages to get the shield. Magnet Storm coming in for Mickey. He will sacrifice himself. Caps survives. Reckless survives.
And impressively, Schalke 04 managed to win that fourth game as well. And G2 was really on the back foot here against all odds, and perhaps being a bit too cocky after the first two wins that they would easily close this one out. They were actually on the back foot, and I wouldn't say that the level of play of either team was super high. I think that rather than Schalke 04 playing insanely well, I think it was G2 who was just having a really bad day, and Schalke 04 playing better than they had in overall during the regular split, but still not like a super outstanding. They were just incredibly resilient and knew where to take the small advantages where their opponents was falling. So we went to a game 5, and obviously nobody saw this coming. I think that many people would have expected that 3-0 win, as I said at the beginning, or maybe a 3-1. Now, there in game 5, man, it may have been the most exciting series of the entire playoffs. I mentioned earlier that SK versus Fnatic, the fourth game, was incredibly exciting. But this one, because of the stakes, you had G2 as the reigning champion, Schalke 04 barely making it to the playoffs, but also G2 being 2-0 up and Schalke 04 almost completing the reverse sweep. So there was a lot of pressure on this game, and it was incredibly exciting to watch. Now, during the game itself, you could see that G2 try to find the dominance early on, try to play, okay, we're going to follow that basic rules really well because that's how we know how to play, and we're going to just outperform them on that level. But Schalke 04 was very good in answering this, and actually you could see that even though G2 was ahead, Schalke 04 was trying, and Schalke 04 actually managed to turn the game around the mid game with an overstaying G2 in the mid lane and a great engage from Schalke 04 as a team.
Caps takes him out, but look at Jankos on the side.
Jankos
He can
jumps
disable
in,
the tower.
Encore straight in as well, but there's the TP immediately from Broken Blade. Limit going in with a Magnet Storm, and they're looking for the damage. You can see everyone
The
in.
rockets!
Here comes Aatrox G2. You've been in this spot before, and the Aatrox lands, and the Emperor finds his victims. A double for Neon, a double for Broken Blade, and wonder is thunder.
So from here on, Schalke 04 were actually the team in the lead and the ones who were on the advantage against G2. So they were almost on the verge of kicking G2 down to the lower bracket. But unfortunately, G2, with everything they had, they tried to fight their way back into the game, tried to close it out against Schalke 04, despite G2's definite and undoubtedly bad performance of the day and the bad shape they were in. And what's so scary is that they actually managed to do it. Obviously, very disappointing for Schalke 04, but very scary to see that the G2, that on a very bad day, still can turn around and win games that seemingly they were like losing. So G2 won that game and advanced in the top bracket. And then we went to Rogue versus Mad Lions on Sunday. Rogue the favorites heading into the series. I think that many people would have regarded them as the dominant favorites as well. We saw a lot of 9-0 predictions heading into the weekend, meaning that many people thought they would 3-0 Mad Lions. Now, I don't think that is entirely unreasonable, even though I said as well that I'd be one of the people predicting a 3-0 for Rogue, because throughout the regular split they had just looked so dominant, and Mad Lions had almost just barely found their footing. Now, In game 1, we saw that Rogue was definitely here to win with the Senna chokeout bot lane, which they had played before during the regular split. Mad Lions was trying something more spicy to play the Jinx and a Thresh bot lane. It once again was a very slow game. Like, not much happened, even though Kaiser had a great Thresh hook to open up the game. Great performance from him overall through the series. So he got the first kill. Rogue struck back and got control over the game in a typical Rogue fashion. They just skilled towards the late game and made sure that they were always just one step ahead of Mad Lions wherever they wanted to go. And in team fights as well, Rogue looked much more dominant. It was a great performance from Inspired and Larson on his typical pick, Azir. It was just a great showing from them overall, and I think this went the way many people would have expected it to go. But then, in game 2, Rogue thought, well, let's just do the same again. We won. And Mad Lions thought, you know what? We can also do most of the same again in their draft. They once again had a Jinx in the bot lane. And kind of a repeat formula there. Now, this game was completely different from the get-go. I think that Mad Lions played far more proactively and realized, hey, we had a real shot at game 1 had we just done like a few things a little bit better. And you could see Mad Lions just being incredibly strong and in the face of Rogue. I think this was it wasn't a complete flip, but you could definitely see, okay, things have turned around and the dynamics have shifted. So that was very exciting to see, at least from my perspective, that Mad Lions were able to strike back against Rogue. They pretty comfortably, I would say, won that second game, and Rogue looked kind of helpless, even though they were trying the same thing as in game 1. So Mad Lions tied the score to a 1-1. And then in game 3, I had hoped that Rogue would change a bit. They had seen Mad Lions shift things up, so I thought, okay, well, Rogue, now is really the time to change something up. But it didn't really do a lot of changing, especially when it comes to the playstyle. I'd hoped, okay, you've seen Mad Lions be able to play more proactively and play in your face. Try to see if you can match them there, or maybe be better at it, because that's... When you play against Mad Lions, if you win that early game, Mad Lions generally has a hard time fighting back, because they have this skirmish heavy playstyle all across the map, and if you just win from there and expand your lead, then they can't really pick those fights. Now in that game 3, Mad Lions were even stronger than in game 2 and in game 1. So Mad Lions just won again super dominantly, and I think this is something that many people didn't see coming, from the perspective that they didn't see Rogue's performance coming, and I was definitely one of them, where I had hoped that they would bring out more weapons than what they had shown so far. Instead, they didn't. They looked incredibly indecisive in what they wanted to do overall. I think that Trimby especially had a very difficult game in game 3 overall. He had a very rough series. So there was a very dominant win from Mad Lions. Very impressive from them to come back. And then we went to game 4. Game 4, arguably, once again, the most exciting game of the series, with Rogue finally shifting things up, and instead of sticking with like their Senna, and also in game 3 they played the Kai'Sa, they went for something new. Okay, so they brought the Aphelios on Hansama, and he had a very strong start. He went up 3-0 very early in the game, and that gave Rogue a very good lead. Like for 20 minutes at least, it felt like Rogue were definitely winning this. We're going to a game 5. It's time for Silver Scrapes. However, Mad Lions did not let this happen. They, with their composition that just did favor them from the start, I still would say that Rogue had a much better point in the game once the game started. After that, Hansama dominant opening, and Rogue played around that pretty well. But you could still see that when the pressure was on, the Mad Lions realized, hey, if we deliver a bit of pressure, this team has difficulty fighting against us. This is where Mad Lions were absolutely taking the advantage of Rogue's weakness in this sense. And you could see that best at one of the best turnarounds I've seen Mad Lions make in quite a while.
He's got Armut in the top lane too with 12,000 1,000 gold to his name. That's no joke, and they're going to Larson.
All right, Larson's going to be the next target. Gold card will tag him, and there's enough members of Rogue making their way. Can Armor get the fear beyond death? Dashes forward, not going to be able to find a Rogue making their way out. They will be able to find themselves a kill, but what will it cost? Teleports available for Humanoid, and Rogue decide not to chase. They turn around and try to burn down Kaiser. Unbreakable Will is up. There's no ulti from Armit, and he's going to be the focus of Inspired. And Hansama, that's engaged! That's Causey jumping all the way forward, but he's blown up! He's taken up by Hans! Hans stays alive just long enough to watch the rest of his teammates die, and finally Odoamne goes down. That's going to be the ace for Mad Lions. They're right back into this game!
Mad Lions!
And impressively, Mad Lions won that series, so they too advanced to the upper bracket finals, where they will play G2, and Rogue was kicked down to the lower bracket. So, let's take a look at how these brackets look now. In the upper bracket, we see G2 play against Mad Lions. Obviously, the winner of this game advances to the grand finals. Pretty hype matchup, I would say, especially because these teams have a bit of a history, with Mad Lions winning against G2 in 3-2 fashion last spring split. So that was definitely an exciting matchup to see again. Then in the lower bracket, Fnatic plays against Schalke 04 to keep their hopes alive for either team at having a shot at recovery and making it to the finals, the winner of which will play against Rogue. Now for some thoughts on the teams in general. I'll start at the lowest seed and work my way up from there. So we start with SK Gaming. I think SK Gaming actually impressed me quite a bit. I think heading into the series against Fnatic, while I did think that they would win a series, I did not think that every game that they played against Fnatic would be as close as it was, and that they would be as resilient as they proved to be. I think that's a lot of potential in this team. If you think that heading into the split, they had 5 players from 5 different teams, counting 3 rookies, people with not much stage experience in general, I think that's incredibly impressive for the coaching staff, especially to pull off. And when I look at their performance overall, I think Genex has really flourished as a top laner. His swap to the top lane has been incredible. I think that even though during the regular split, especially the first half, he didn't really show up when it matters, he really is there for his team. Treats is a given, obviously, as a performer. I still think that Blue in the mid lane is more often a liability for his team than not. But against the series, in the series against Fnatic, he was just more invisible rather than really dragging his team down, I would say. Tinks is a jungler with a lot of potential. I think he's a rookie, so give him some time to develop more. I don't think he is at the moment looking to be a serious superstar jungler, but absolutely a consistent factor. I could see him become that. So overall, I'm very positive about SK Gaming and the potential for them in the summer split. I think they can cause quite a ruckus there. Then Fnatic, I think Fnatic definitely underperformed. Even though they won, they did so with a lot more problems than I would have liked to see. You can say, okay, maybe heading into the playoffs you have some starting trouble, right? But I think that throughout the entire series, the team played incredibly inconsistently, did not play their fights the way they should play them. They don't play across the map as they should play them. They caused a lot more trouble for themselves than they did, and they have a very dominant bot lane, but it would almost barely translate into the later stage of the game when Fnatic was looking for engage and stuff like this. So that's something I definitely think they should work on, and even though they have this aggressive playstyle, which should work better against Schalke 04, then G2 is maybe a bit more calm playstyle, which gave Schalke 04 a lot of room to wriggle. I think Fnatic is going to have a bit more trouble, but we'll get more about that in my LEC preview series on Thursday. Still, Fnatic needs to step it up, definitely. And then we get to Schalke 04. I think Schalke 04, as I mentioned before, did not play all of a sudden super stellarly. Like, these guys are world championship contenders, but they played impressively well for how they played during the regular split. I still think that with this roster and the names on the roster, they could perform better. But if you just look at how mentally stable they were, as I said, after going 0-2 down, I think that shows a lot of promise. They seem to be very comfortable with the meta already, which is also very promising for them. So I think that their series against Fnatic is going to be a real banger on the second weekend. So Then we get to Mad Lions. I think Mad Lions surprised many people. Many people were obviously very excited for the roster because this is a team that in playoffs spring last year lived up to most people's hypes. But I was still skeptical with their performance for the regular split. But they washed all of that away. They seemed very comfortable on stage. They performed impressively well. I think Elyoya on that team and Kaiser were absolutely smurfing. They had a super star performance, you could say, like Elyoya as a rookie, first time playing on a stage ever, already keeping up with the top teams. I think that was incredibly impressive. So I'm very hopeful for their series against G2. It's gonna obviously be a very difficult game for them, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we go to like a 5-game series against them. Then we go to Rogue. Rogue is obviously a big disappointment of the weekend. Game 1 was fine, you know, they won in the style they did, but they pivoted way too late in the series with adjusting their style, adjusting the way they want to play, and even when they did so, when they got a lead, they absolutely threw that lead. Pretty inexcusable play from them, especially if you look at how they played during the regular split. They played controlled, and here they just lost control, didn't adapt. And in the summer split, we saw this as well, where they got 3-0'd by Fnatic in the upper bracket and then dropped to the lower bracket. There they recovered, and there they adjusted their playstyle. There they look much stronger. So I really hope that this gives them a wake-up call as well, that they really need to change things. And G2 was also disappointing in how they played. I think it was a bit of cockiness after the first 2 games that cost them their initial game, but then they just dropped in playstyle. They did not seem to be comfortable with what they played from there on anymore, and I think that is definitely problematic. Still, it's G2 with their star power. Winning that series is the bare minimum. I think that's what they did. They did the bare minimum, but if this is a team that everybody wants to send to MSI, I think G2 really needs to step up and really needs to prove that they still can dominantly win series like these. And with that, we go to the LEC SuperFantasy standings, because yes, even during the playoffs, you can still play. So let's look at the top 10 in my lobby. At first place, we have Witta with 5,795 points. Following behind it is Stipan with 5,556 points. I'm in third place with 5,371 points. Loco X follows at 5,300 clean. Then we have Lucky Reed at 5,053. Bene in 6th place with 9,497. Very close to the 5,000 mark. Never Lucky at 4,922. Faramir at 4,847. Panda Barely's at 4,706. And in 10th place is Goldfire 432 with 4,629 points. So that's my recap for the week 1 playoffs. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the series, which were highlights that you found outstanding and which players were you excited about. Thank you very much for watching again, and I'll be releasing quite a bit of content leading up to the next week. I have 2 interviews coming out and 1 preview as usual. Stay tuned for that preview on Thursday. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more content.